to this, the sixth episode of Chakmah Choter. This is the story of what should well be the most interesting man in the world. Not of all time, because that honor and distinction falls to David, the king of Israel, who will be returning to be the king of forevermore. And he is the Messiah. He is the Son of God, whose titles were stolen by the writers of the Christian New Testament to create the myth of a man-God in Jesus. Dowd is the actual character, the actual man who fulfilled Chakmah Choter in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah. This is perhaps the greatest discovery in all of human history. And yet when I share it with God's people, they yawn. It is a travesty how corrupt, perverted their thinking has become as a result of the rabbis who have made everything about themselves and nothing about Yahweh or his beloved. The story that we're telling was actually written by Dowd. He wrote it 3,000 years ago. And yes, his name is Dowd, not David. There's no V in the text of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And the O sound comes from the Wa. So it's Daleth, Wa, Daleth. Dowd. He is God's chosen one, well, according to God. He is the Messiah that Yahweh anointed 3 times. He is routinely referred to as my Messiah or your Messiah when speaking of his association with Yahweh. He is the only person that Yahweh specifically said, he is my son and I am his father. He is referred to as the firstborn, a Bakor. He is the shepherd. He is the former and returning king. And Dowd has already lived 2 lives, and he will live a 3rd. The great travesty is that all that he achieved, all of his accolades, his due, was stolen by 2 religions. First by Peter, Paul, Luke, and Mark of Christianity, when they, and their hearsay texts, claimed that everything pursuant to Dowd, being the Son of God, being the king, being the shepherd, being the branch, being the Messiah, being the Savior, the one who fulfilled Passover, the one who was actually crucified by the Romans, somehow belonged to this mythical misnomer, Iesu Christou, who never actually existed. To make matters worse, rather than recognizing that there had been hundreds of exceedingly specific prophecies regarding Dowd, many written in his own hand, many in first person, where Dowd himself said, I will suffer crucifixion, where he announced that he would fulfill Chakmah Choter, described exactly how that would transpire in first person with the 22nd Mizmor psalm. And in the first 30 psalms, he explains why he decided to serve in this capacity and why God elected to allow his son to do this very thing. And yet, rather than recognize that, rabbis in the first century, instead of saying to the Christian authors, you're full of it, there's not a prayer that this mythical misnomer, Iesu Christou, this Greek name with a Greek title, is somehow associated with anything that was said in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, especially when everything that is said about what just happened pertains to Dowd. But they didn't do that. Instead, they foisted another false Messiah on the world, Bar Kokhba. You might know his symbol, Yisrael, because it's under his star that you parade. It's a great travesty, of course, that this has happened to the greatest man in the world, and it is exceedingly irritating to God. My job is to restore Yahweh's name and his son's acclaim. to an exceedingly thick-headed, stiff-necked audience in Yehuda and Yisrael. It is a very difficult task that I am pursuing because God himself gave up on you. He said, I can't stand you anymore. I'm going to heaven. He told you that in Hosea, saying your religion sickens me. I've tried. I can't get through your sick heads. So I'm just out of here. See you later. And all the while, God said he couldn't find anyone. There wasn't a single Jew, not one, over the course of 2,500 years that would listen to him, that was receptive to him, that would speak to his people about him. And so God shared many hundreds and hundreds of prophecies about the fact that he would go outside of the tribe to find an Akri, an observant foreigner, whom he would use to do this very thing, to reacquaint his people with their Savior, their Messiah, their King, God, and to reestablish Yahweh's name among his people. That is my job, although you are not making it easy, and that is to your shame. Well, as we continue in the 14th mashal that Dode wrote of the man that would do this on his behalf, he says, as was the case with Moshe and with himself, that there would be tears and jeers along the way. And so, in addition, gam is the Hebrew word, in joyful laughter as well as in mocking derision, ba shakok, in sport and scorn, ridicule and in humor. He may be anguished and grieved. He may be pained and sickened, may be sore and sorrowful, but he will also be both judgmental and at sometimes in his thought process, he may even show some emotion. This is an interesting statement. And by the way, my lovely wife just brought me a smoothie of watermelon juice with my favorite flower. This is a plumeria. We grow, probably have 500 plumeria trees here on our property. That is lovely. We also grow our own bananas, and I think that is mixed with the banana. It is a lovely treat that we have and we can produce right here on our property on this beautiful island. Also, speaking of things that are available to you and to me, Mariah, a lovely covenant member, was able to take the full text of this chapter that I'm sharing with you right now and turn it into a form that Facebook would actually accept. They don't accept PDFs. And this gives you the opportunity, should you want to read along with us. When it comes to sharing the Word of God, I do not ad lib. When it comes to sharing my thoughts about it, most everything is ad lib. Although, when I'm doing the translation and insights come to me about what I have just observed, I will share them in the text. And I'm always keen to convey them to you as well as my own thoughts as we're reviewing this live and this live stream together. But if you want to find the basis of these translations, you will find them posted on our Facebook page, the Craig Wynn Facebook page. Very high up, I think it's the first item now in the page underneath this particular live stream. So that's there for your consideration, should you want to follow along. So Dode said that this is going to be a thoughtful exercise as well as an emotional one. It is going to be a time of great joy, but also of mocking derision. It will be a time of anguish and even grieving at times. And all of those reactions are true. Israel, you are a tough crowd. I love every moment with Yahweh. I Here it is now, 6:30 Atlantic time. The sun has now set. I started this morning well before sunrise, doing translations and commentary on what is now Second Chronicles 6, from beginning to the end. In fact, I even went a chapter before it, and then all the way to the end of the chapter. And it's hard to pull myself away from translating and sharing insights, because it is the most rewarding part of this job. This is the toughest part of the job, where I'm trying to convince you, Yisrael, Jews, to listen, to change. It's the thing that God says, well, he must have said it 1,000 times. You need to shub. You need to change. You've done it one way, which is the religious way, the political way, now for 3,000 years, and it has worked out very poorly for you. And nothing is going to change in that regard, other than it's going to get much worse over these next 8 years as you enter the time of Jacob's troubles. And the only hope for any of you is to change, to return to Yahweh, embrace his name, accept the greatness of his son Dod and all that he has done for you. Walk away from the rabbis. They have robbed you of a relationship with Yahweh. They have robbed you of your soul. Take it back from them. So, also in joyful laughter as well as in mocking derision. He may be anguished and grieved, although he will be judgmental and bear the proper attitude. While with her future in the end, jubilation will become anguish and affliction. Her, in this particular case, speaks to a really horrible person, one of the worst people I have met along life's way, and I have met some real scum. But there was a woman that feigned friendship with my wife for the purpose of filling voids in her life. She was a complete fraud the entire time, but she weaseled her way into my company through my wife, and such that when she was here, she did everything she could to undermine everybody, including me, and besmirch my wife with everyone, telling all who would listen, people who had followed me for years, that my wife was a evil woman, when in fact all she was doing is projecting her own traits on someone else, and the whole time being totally manipulative. And she was able to lure away a goodly number of people. I use goodly as significant, not as in good. Although, many of them had at one time been that way. But they have been badly tarnished now. And so she is the one that may at moments celebrate their newfound fame, where they wear me like a skin, where they have nothing to offer that is original, other than to twist and pervert what I have written and shared over the years. And what Dode is saying, because he's really angry at her, despises her, because he loves my wife. He cares deeply about what I'm doing on his behalf and what we are achieving with his people. He knows that mine is an arranged marriage between his father, that his father coordinated to bring us together to serve Yisrael, and anything that stands in the way of that. Dode is the first line of defense. He is our king, and he is exceedingly displeased. And so he is saying the fate of this evil woman is affliction. Now, in my case, since I'm more cerebral than emotional, I'm not often grieved. My wife will tell you that. However, Israel is an exceedingly tough customer. You're not going to wear me down. You will not prevail in being indignant and irascible. I do not give two hoots if your heads are as tough as that Western Wall to which you bow. You will change in the end. Of that I am certain, because the prophets have spoken of it. That doesn't mean all of you will. Some, at least 2/3 of you, probably many more than that, won't even survive the next 8 years. And of those who do survive, most of you won't change. But there will be thousands of you, hopefully many, many thousands of you, who will listen, who will restore their relationship with Yahweh and their Messiah, the Son of God, their King, Dowd. So yes, Israel is a tough customer, and those opposing her are so vindictive. Frustration is common. It's hard to fathom how a God so generous, uplifting, and kind can be so unpopular. But among Israelites, he is. They won't even say his name. A name that he provided to them 7,000 times, and yet they have erased it. It's almost as if they're embarrassed by it. And yet their name includes his. And by the way, his sons, Yahud. Yah is in Yahweh. Ud, Dod, means Yahweh's beloved. You bear both names, and yet you won't recognize either. As for the reaffirmation that the likes of those who have rebelled against me, and I want to stop here and reemphasize something. I had Kevin. I didn't have Kevin. Kevin did this on his own initiative, but he produced a short of a segment I did on fractured families. And it is the best short in a long time. It explains how every family associated with God's people and even with God himself is fractured. And so when I speak of a fracture in what was the covenant family prior to our rebranding and move towards this Yahweh blog under the light of this menorah, I'm in good company. And it's important for you to recognize that. Dowd recognized that it would happen now, and Dowd's an expert when it comes to fractured families. So is Yahweh. Yahweh's had a fractured covenant family from the beginning. And it is as bad as it could possibly be now. Dowd, as I've shared, he had his third-born son kill his firstborn because his firstborn raped his daughter. That's really bad. Then he had his son lead a rebellion, a coup d'etat against him to overthrow his sovereignty. That's really bad. I'm not sure that it gets a whole lot worse as it relates to fractured families than what Dowd experienced. Dowd was even married to the man who sought to kill him. That's not so good either, is it? Dowd had one of the most supportive men in his life that he sent off thinking he would possibly die in a battle because he coveted his wife. And that put him at odds for a while with Yahweh himself. That's a fractured family. Dod is symbolic of Israel. He is both that fractured family and the one who brings it all together. You look at Moshe. Moshe's was given up by his mother, brought into the worst family on earth at the time in Pharaoh's house, raised by the Pharaoh, tries then to save his own people, his family, from being beaten to death by an Egyptian taskmaster. And what happens? Rather than thank him, they threaten him. That's why he hightailed out of Mitzrayim and was shepherding sheep in Arabia when Yahweh introduced himself to him. Oh, by the way, by name, saying Yahweh is his name for all time. The only way he wants to be remembered. Not as Hashem, not as Adonai, not as G-D, as Yahweh. Certainly you believe Moshe and the Torah, right? No, I guess you don't. Well, Moshe would, tell Yahweh, no, there's no way I want to go back and help those people. Look what they did to me. Surely you know what they did to me when I tried to help them the last time. But Yahweh is persistent. I tried that same thing too, to weasel out of this job. Yeah, you don't bother to argue with God. When he wants what he wants, he gets what he wants. I'm glad, I'm delighted. I mean, I'm not going to suggest for a moment that he usurped my free will. He just has a way of saying, okay, I want you to do this job. What do you want in return? And instead of saying, I want a small fortune, thank you very much. No, I just said, I want you to protect my family so they're not threatened because the job you're asking me to do, no one has ever survived. Second, I would really like you to be at my side this entire time, because the job you're asking me to do, I'm not qualified to do, and I don't think anyone in the history of the world's ever been qualified to do. So it's essential we work together, not independently. And the third thing I said is because my whole skill set going to this point has been marketing. I think it's important that you take the reins and marketing what we do as it relates to the first job was Islam, promoting our findings. And I always said, well, reach into your pocket and read what's there. I did, and it was the 91st Psalm, which God promises to do all of those things. And we were off and going at that moment. So Yahweh is good that way. But we're talking about Moshe, and Moshe not only had the children of Israel rebel against him while he was up getting the 10 statements etched in stone and making a golden calf, and then he had his own sister and his brother challenge him where they said, we don't like your wife, and besides that, we think we should also be able to speak for God. And God set them in their place. But it was a week later, they were at the waters of Meribah and had a meltdown again. And they had the meltdown when they sent the spies in to look at the land. And it was just one series of annoying things after another. Fractured families. That is the nature of the covenant from beginning to end. So when I say that, and Dod sees that we suffered in this regard, it is necessary. It isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of success. Look at Hosea. He was asked to marry a temple prostitute so that he would have empathy with God for trying to develop a relationship with Israel, the adulterous woman. You can't do this job and speak for Yahweh as his pay, as his kol voice, his mouth and voice, unless you have empathy for him. You got to know what he was up against, why he's so frustrated with his people. And so that is the reason why we had the rebellion. And quite frankly, Yahweh wanted to upgrade and change the team and change our approach, which is what we did, and got rid of some really, it turned out to be some really nasty people. Not all of them were really nasty, but certainly the ringleaders were. So this is a reaffirmation that the likes of those who indeed rebelled against our mission are going to end up being anguished and afflicted in the end. And this is not because of me, and that we have a new and improved team and have moved well past them. I suspect this is because of Yahweh and Toad. Our collaboration is essential to the rehabilitation of their relationship with Israel, and that any disruption in that by someone is going to be greeted with extreme disdain. Frankly, the disposition of the covenant and the planet are riding on our success. So Father and Son are not inclined to overlook any obstacle thrown in our way, and they were relentless with obstacles. What follows is absolutely true, and it has been so from the beginning. Because of his conduct and path, he will be continually satisfied, turning away in judgment, disposition, and determination. Because concerning him, Ish Tob, he is a proper, productive, and good man. Well, there's a shout out. This is Proverbs 14:14, the shout out from my king and from our God. It's nice to receive a whoop whoop or an attaboy every now and again. As I say, it's a tough job. I love the job. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, nor would God allow me to do so at this time, because there really aren't any replacement players at this point. But nonetheless, it's saying that it is because of the conduct that I have manifest all the way along this journey, and it has been a journey of discovery, that I have been continuously satisfied in turning away, being judgmental, um, using great determination. When somebody proved to be unreliable, disloyal, unfaithful, working against the things that I have offered to them and brought to them, I'm very decisive. That's it. We're done. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And that seems to be acceptable and pleasing to our King and God. And it says, because concerning him, Ishtob, he's a proper, productive, and good man. Now, just to put this thing in proper perspective here, Tob means many things: generous, pleasing, desirable, acceptable, proper, productive. All of those things. And all those things are just fine. Good, not my favorite word. Shaul was good, and yet he was a very evil man. What matters with God is being right, not good. And so I'm much more focused on Sadak than I am on Tob. But to be productive in bringing Yisrael back home and cultivating the Shabuah and Teruah harvest, and even laying down my life as the Adamah Parah on Teruah for the benefit of the adulterous woman and Israel's groom, which will be Dod, her king. That is a good thing to do. It's productive. prosperous thing to do. And so I will take the attaboy up to the point of good's not so good. Not in Yahweh's parlance. It's much better to be right. But it has taken a score of years and some 100,000 hours to translate the text, add the commentary, and deduce the insights, as well as scribe the results, and ultimately figure all of this out from beginning to end. And it's true that I have stayed the course. And I'm not only satisfied with what we have accomplished, I seem to have the right disposition. I've shown the proper determination, and I've been appropriately judgmental. Clearly, Yahweh and Toad agree. So here's to family. Together, we have been productive, and that pleases God. And I think Toad and I work exceedingly well together. And don't think for a moment that the Christians are right in their New Testament that Toad is not only dead and buried and not in heaven, which is what they have written. Toad is the right hand of God. Toad is his beloved son. Toad is the doorway that opens heaven's door. Toad is the very means for us to be part of God's family. Now, to be serviceable to Yahweh, we begin with more than just an open and receptive mind, but that's a good start. We must also show a willingness to purge the culture of religion and politics and then go where the facts lead. I would say that during my first, at least 10 years of doing this, that every month or so, I would find another aspect of my religious past being shed. Those of you who are listening that are Israelites, that are enveloped in that culture and the society tarnished by the religion and politics of Israel, the long history, you're going to find that it will take years to shed all of the lies that you have accepted as true. And there are literally thousands of them. And that was my challenge initially, is letting go of the deceptions. And not that I didn't want to let go of them. You don't even know that they're wrong. You could start with something as simple as, well, there's a Bible. Is that a legitimate term? No, it means with the Lord. It is the means of being confused by intermixing truth and lies. It's a terrible term. It's based on Babel, the very thing that God's asking us to walk away from. There is this thing called a New Testament, and it makes all sorts of claims, and yet it's false from beginning to end. It's a horrible anti-Semitic book that dehumanizes Jews, accuses them of all manner of things that just are not true, and then it foists a completely false counterfeit in place of the most important man who ever lived, the Son of God, Daud. It even turns this fake man into a god, which is just ludicrous. First of all, it takes a title that is not really a prophetic title at all. Messiah. Messiah is a title that says that God anointed Daud so that he was prepared, equipped, and authorized to do the jobs that needed to be done. It isn't in his top 20 most important titles. And so it takes this one that really isn't a prophetic title at all and gloms onto it, giving it a Greek spin. And then it pretends that a man who made up out of thin air, but that would have absolutely none of the prerequisites that's necessary to serve in this role, is projected in it as identity theft of Dode. And on top of all that, it robs God's son of everything he achieved. And then it goes so far as to call a man God. There is no place where God says that a man is God. I mean, the only suggestion of that is in the 89th Mizmor, where Yahweh is waxing poetic about his son. I mean, the entire 89th Mizmor is, Dode is my son, I am his father, he is the Messiah, he is the King of Kings. It's his throne and his house. That oh, here's the Wookiee. Well, hello there, Wookiee. Well, let's say hello to the people there, Wookiee. Okay, well, all right. Now Asher wants up here too. Oh my. Yes, they all my sleeve is being pulled on by my Labrador, whose name is Asher, and of course this is Wookiee, whose tail is now in my drink. And you think this is an easy job? As I was saying, and it's it's tough to keep your concentration at moments like this when you're having a tail like that wagged in your face. Is that the only mention of a person having godly characteristics is only once. And it is in Yahweh's song where he wrote the lyrics to his son Dode. So it only applies to one person, Dode. Dode is mentioned throughout the Mizmor. Dode is called every positive thing you could possibly call a human being throughout the Mizmor. And in it, when it talks about Dode returning with Yahweh, it says that he will be as brilliant as the sun, and that he will be essentially Elyon. And Elyon is a godly term. It is used by God himself to describe who he is, which is to say that the purpose of the covenant that Dode made available to us by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim is to transform us from this physical beings stuck in the ordinary flow of time that degrade with time in these bodies to being essentially like light, energy-based, brilliant as the sun, like God in the sense that he's a spiritual being, Elyon. And so what it does is completely destroy the Christian myth, because rather than Dode as a man being God, it is Dode returning as the son and the king of the universe, as God's right hand, being ever more like him without a body. God does not have a body. All of God wouldn't fit into our entire universe, much less our galaxy, much less our solar system, much less our planet, much less all of Israel, much less a single human being. I mean, you just have to be stupid to be a Christian and to believe that a person who isn't even mentioned apart from these hearsay accounts is somehow God. No, Dode is the one. This Mizmor he wrote about me because I'm the first person in 3,000 years to explain, well, let's be fair, 2,500 years, because Yeshaya knew a lot about Dode. So did Zechariah, so did Yoel, so did Malachi. So the last of the prophets spoke vociferously about Dode, even Yirmiah. And so it is true that in the last 2,500 years, I am the first and only person to understand who Dode really is, what he has achieved, why it is essential that we embrace these truths if we're going to return to God. And so I'm also the only person to reintroduce God's name to his people. I'm the only person to have written 35 books of a translation, of an amplified translation, a far more accurate and complete translation, an easily verified translation of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. I'm also the only person who has written 13 books disproving the religions that get in the way of the relationship God intends: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. There's a lot writing on this. We have accomplished a lot together. And so Dode is exceedingly protective and supportive, as is Yahweh. And so it is true that to be usable to God, to even enter his company, we have to be willing to purge all of the culture of religion and politics and go where the facts lead. And for me, that was a deliberate process over the period of some 20 years. And even, the first 10 years were the most challenging of it, because I was wrong about a number of things. It's just part of the culture. And if you're a Jew, you're going to think that I'm wrong about the pronunciation of Yahweh's name because you've been told that for so long. You're going to think that there was an oral Torah, that the Talmud is Torah, because you can't fathom it being otherwise. You're going to think that Pesach is actually a 7-day celebration when it's not. You will not have any appreciation for matzah being the center of Chag matzah and Pesach just being the first day. This notion that God has a son, it's tough for you to accept because you have been lied to for so long about that, or that there really is a man who was called the Messiah by Yahweh, who is also the returning king for whom Yahweh is building the throne. These are difficult things for you to process. So I can empathize with you. And I know that in this case, I've just had a 24-year head start. So Dode writes, the open-minded, pethe, the readily persuaded with the capacity for changing his mind and his situation, can be trustworthy and reliable, dependable and true, with every word and statement. Now, pithe, which is the operative term of Dode's 19th Mizmor. Dode's 19th Mizmor is a soaring ode to the Torah. And he says that the Torah is easy to understand for those who are open-minded, and that it is provides salvation for our souls. And in it, he uses pithe. And for the most part, pithe means to be open-minded and receptive, which is part of the process that we need to develop if we're going to be receptive to God. But they can also mean simple-minded as well. And it is used even in this mashal to besmirch those who are simple-minded. So it's like so many Hebrew words. There's a dark and a light side, and it is our chakmah up here, our intelligence, that must discern the proper application in every case. So the open-minded, he is trustworthy and reliable, dependable and true, Aman. And that was one of the things that I made a deal with Yahweh on, is I said, I'll go where your words lead. No matter where your words lead. I don't care how unpopular it is, I'll go where your words lead. I mean, can you imagine how unpopular it is to have to say that Jesus Christ never existed, that he is a complete myth, that he is the product of identity theft, and that the person who actually did what matters in fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, is actually the Son of God, is actually the returning King and Shepherd and our Savior, and his name is Dode David. That's one of 10,000 examples. But if you're true to the words and you go where they lead, then you're in a position to serve God's people and to be acceptable to him. And this says that because of my willingness to be open and receptive to what God said through his prophets, I would not only be trustworthy and reliable, dependable and true, but with every word and statement, la kol debar. And for those who know me, there have been lots of them. I have never been accused of being shy when it comes to using words. And so, Arum, the productive, the prudent, and the discerning, the sensible and disciplined, the perceptive and judicious, makes the proper connections to understand, bien. And he then considers, perceives, and distinguishes the relevant associations to comprehend the direction of his steps and his stance, la ashur, hue, of his path and conduct. This is Mashal, Word Pictures, 14:15. Chakmah, which is intelligence, wisdom, discernment, is framed by both Arum and Bien. Arun is this ability to be prudent, to be discriminating, to be sensible, to be disciplined in your approach to learning and comprehension, to be very perceptive and judicious, judgmental with regard to what you're seeing and reading. You got to know where to look and then how to be discriminating on what's true and what is not, and how things relate to one another. But ultimately, while knowledge replaces faith, where there is knowing, there is no believing. Where there is no knowing, there is only believing. And so it is knowing, yada, that provides this foundation to know and therefore no longer believe. But the ultimate goal is to bien, and to Arun, to bien, to be disciplined in one's thinking and perceptive and judgmental, so that you can bien, make the proper connections to understand. Bien is the most powerful force in the universe, understanding. And it is that understanding that directs the steps of the Chakmah Choter. Throughout it all, I have tried to remain consistent in my approach to Yahweh's testimony, such that the result is trustworthy and reliable. Now, that does not mean that all 400,000 statements that I have made over the years are perfect in their inception, complete and unalterable, but that as I have learned, they have become more so. We have evolved, we have grown in our knowledge of God. In fact, this Yahweh blog could not begin until we reached a point where these books, 35 of them, had been written, and that I embodied the sum total of the knowledge and understanding that is contained in them, because I wrote them, but that the entire picture finally fit together. And we knew all of the most important things that God wanted to share with his people. And it was only then that it was appropriate, where God said, young man, you've written enough. One more book isn't going to change much. What I want you to do is start speaking directly to my people. And that's when we started the Yahweh blog. And you don't want to do this. You don't want to turn the camera on and live stream on YouTube, Facebook, and X, unless you're prepared. There's no editing here. There's no do-overs. This is all based upon what we have learned and God wants us to share. What I have discovered over the years is that you need to trust the process. And when you witness to what you have learned, when you are diligent and steadfast in your procedures for studying and translating and commenting on the testimony of Yahweh, and when you seek the connections, the common denominators, which lead from knowing to understanding, then insights become common. And many of them are profound. Now, earlier, I had correctly stated that we were evaluating the third of 4 times that was on a previous program, but nonetheless true, that Chakmah, Chakham, and Chakmoth appeared in the text of the Mashal. That I, at least the portions of it that I had previously contemplated. There would be several more. And this is definitely the Chakmah Choter of word pictures that Dode is drawing. And I would dare say that while Yada and Bien are my favorite Hebrew words, I relish knowing and understanding, Dode appears to be Chakmah, wisdom, intellect. He wields this word commonly and weaves it through his mashal and his mizmor, but particularly his mashal, which are word pictures about his life as the son in the covenant family. He writes the Chakam, the wise and circumspect one, the one who knows and is discerning with intellectual discipline, who learns and then teaches wisely. He is respectful and he is inspiring. Yari. Thankfully, my wife likes me. So, hey, that's 3, right? I got Yahweh, Dode, and my wife. And eventually I'll wear you down, Yisrael. You'll come to appreciate what I'm saying one day too. Therefore, he turns away from that which is troubling and wrong, raw, that which is inaccurate and immoral, disagreeable and malignant, vexing and for naught. But the foolishly rebellious, ignorant, and irrational simpleton, wa kasel, the stupid and senseless, is passed over for independently going to the other side. Sounds like a rebellion to me. A bar is intoxicated and is passed by, alienated and estranged for transgressing on their own initiative. Hit pa'el participle. We'll address that in a moment. And they stumble, they trip and fall, losing control by misstepping. Mashal, word pictures, Proverbs 14:16. So we are embraced now for the 4th time by a variation of Chakmah, this one Chakam, the wise and circumspect one. That is Dode's perception of the Choter. That is Yahweh's perceptions of the Choter. Now, the difference between Dode's perceptions and Yahweh's, because all of these mashal that Dode wrote were inspired by his father Yahweh, is that Dode recognizes, as a prophet, he was brought forward in time. He recognizes the intelligence that is required to figure out what he achieved, who he is, and what he's due, as well as to figure out the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name, to properly identify the terms and conditions and the benefits associated with the Bereth covenant, to know how they're enabled through the Mikre invitations to meet with God, to put together the timeline from beginning to end, to understand God's entire story. And that's all neat and everything. And we did those things together. Yeah, it's pretty cool. The only person in human history to ever do them. So I would say that's probably be an attaboy. Might get a gold star for that. Who knows? Well, I don't want a gold star. That sounds a little Mark Hockwa to me. Anyway, Yahweh, of course, stacked the deck. He gave the Choter, and he explains this in Yeshayah, the 11th chapter, with seven spirits. And they're the ones that make the Choter Chakmah. They're the ones that provide the Choter with bien, understanding. They're the ones that give the Choter dayat, knowledge. And then there's, of course, the ability to convey this wisely and provide sound counsel about the entire picture. There's the importance of being bold, capable, courageous, and doing so, which is one of the seven spirits, and even the respect for Yahweh's name and the spirit of Yahweh directly. All of these seven spirits were given to the Choter, and the Choter prevails because of them. So yes, the Choter is, as Dode has said, wise. He is circumspect. He is discerning. He is intellectual. All of these things are true. And he is respectful of Yahweh, and he is inspiring pertaining to him. All those things are true, partly because of God chose a person who had some aptitude in these areas, but mostly because God provided what he has never done for anyone else, his seven ruach, to make this possible. And what I want to emphasize here is that God didn't do this for me. He did it for you. Therefore, he turns away from that which is troubling and wrong. Ra is has two meanings in Hebrew, both of which are important. One speaks of countrymen, neighbors, colleagues, fellow citizens of Israel, for example. And the other is wrong, evil, inaccurate, immoral, disagreeable, malignant, kind of concerning Israel, that the word for neighbor and the word for evil is the same exact word, isn't it? Something to think about. But the foolishly rebellious, the ignorant and irrational, the simpleton, is passed over for independently going to the other side, a bar. A bar is a interesting term because it is actually the basis of Pesach. It is its actionable root. And in this case, you have the Yahweh saying that if you celebrate Pesach correctly, what you're doing is opening the doorway to life. And it was about sparing the lives of the firstborn of the children of Israel while taking the firstborn of Mitzrayim. Firstborn is important because Dode is Yahweh's firstborn, and he gave his physical body, Bashar, which meant nothing to him, in this way. He wasn't human sacrifice because the only thing that matters about Dode that made him uniquely who he is his nefesh soul, and his nefesh soul did not die. Just a Bashar body that Yahweh gave him. The same thing will be true with the Adamah Parah when he is sacrificed on Teruah. So what the basis of Passover means is that Yahweh will pass over relative to ending one's life and death those who avail themselves of Pesach as it's intended. And so a bar means to go to the other side, to be even alienated from. And since it's death, you want to be alienated from death. You want to be estranged from dying. And so that's the meaning of the verb. Now, the reason we're saying for independently going to the other side is that it was scribed in the hit pael stem. The hit pael stem means that the foolish and rebellious, the ignorant and irrational, the simpletons, are acting on their own initiative. That God is not speaking through them. That God is not giving his spirit to enlighten and empower and to educate and embolden them. They're doing this on their own. Religious gods are made by men. Jesus is a religious God. Allah is a religious God made by men. Hashem, Adonai, religious gods conceived by men. You don't want to be in that group. So, excuse me. I have a Labrador who has a foot fetish. Maybe I'm not a very good dog parent, but sometimes rather than having her lick herself to the point she can't walk, I need to get her attention. So, excuse me. So, that is why it was independently going to the other side. And when you do so, you're not only estranged from the covenant and from God, from working with God, but you stumble and fall. So in Yashaya 11, Chakmah is a spiritual accoutrement, while here in Mashal 14, Chakam is being presented as a title. According to Dode, the Choter is Chakam, circumspect. He is the circumspect one who is intellectually disciplined. So while he may be a stick, he is a very clever one. I'm laughing because Choter is a stem off the main branch. It is a sucker that gives life to the fallen stump that is Israel. It is the rod of divine judgment. But, at the very basis of it, God picks terms while descriptive can also just be mundane. And while stems bring new life and are productive and fruitful, this one is also a stick. In fact, Yashaya uses the stick nature of the Choter to beat the olive tree for that final gleaning on Teruah, which is how olives are harvested in the final gleaning. It's actually struck with a stick. So although the Choter may be a stick, he is a clever one. And as a result, I have become a wellspring of insights. I have shared thousands upon thousands of previously unheralded, unknown revelations about God and his story and his son through these books that sit behind me and now is part of the Iowa blog. I have revealed more insights about God than anyone in human history, and that would even include Moshe, Dode, and Yashaya. Now, I'm in a different position than they're in, which is what makes this possible. I'm not claiming to be better than them. I'm just telling you I'm in a different position. First, I have everything that they have written to build upon, which they didn't. And that is a huge advantage. Second, I have been afforded 100% of my time without any distractions now for 24 years to bring this to you, which they had lives and other things they had to deal with. And most importantly, I have been given the seven Ruach of Yahweh to make this possible. But collectively, in these books, if you'll read them, in these programs, if you'll listen to them, I reveal more unique insights about God than anyone in human history. Not only telling you who God is, but also emphatically telling you who he is not, including Jesus Christ and Allah and Hashem. For the first 10 years that I served Yahweh in this capacity, I was, challenged by unlearning Christian, political, and conspiratorial platitudes. At the same pace that I was absorbing new information, it was both of these two things working together. I was learning and I was disgorging. Now it's about 99.999% learning and about 0.0001 eliminating. If you're a newbie, as a Israelite, as a Yehudim, as a Jew, a Yehud, somebody who has been overtly political and religious that has realized that, that's not so good. I need to walk away from those things and I want to follow in the footsteps of Yahweh. You have an enormous amount to purge before the truth will all resonate with you. And so just be patient with yourself as you go through the process. Every year after the first 10, there was less and less to scrub from my memory banks as insights from Yahweh flooded in to take their place. And today, there is very little left to turn away from, while divine knowledge and understanding is well entrenched and cataloged in the various places of my brain, ready to be recalled. And it is, at least it should be obvious, to all who study the lives and the lyrics of our King Dode, as his insights are presented throughout his Mizmor and Mashal, Psalms and Proverbs, like this one, the 14th Mashal, that he is an exceedingly quick study with a capacity for profound revelation and articulate presentation. We're studying the words of probably the wisest man who ever lived and the most articulate, and the man who knew Yahweh better than any. And this may be why he suffers fools so poorly, and he does. He sees them as stumbling blocks to progress in our relationship with his Father. And we need to get about the job of scrubbing those religious lies away and embracing the truth, because we only have 8.5 years left. And then we have all eternity to enjoy just the magnificence of being in God's presence, working with him, learning from him, enjoying exploring the universe with him. But we have 8.5 years now that we need to be attentive to this, focused on this. And in this regard, abar is an insightful term because it is the verbal root of Passover, which is the first of the 4 mikre that are fulfilled. The first 3, of course, that Dode fulfilled. And he, by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, enabled the 4th in Shavuot. Shavuot is a Bekurim harvest. Now, this is not only something that the Choter was the first and only person to discern in thousands of years, making it perhaps the greatest discovery in human history, pursuant to God. Once he realized this, then proved it, and began sharing it openly, our relationship became exceedingly important to King Dode, because I was reestablishing him in his rightful place. And that is essential, because if he is not established in his rightful place as the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, the one who is returning, then there is no return. It's all for naught. This isn't a nicety, it is a necessity. Now, there is a difference between being judgmental and being quick-tempered. As in the case presented throughout Dode's Mizmor, he is relentless in his attacks on lesser men with bogus opinions. But rather than being rash, his denunciations are well conceived and thoroughly developed. In this regard, I've tried to emulate my king, such that I'm quick to judge and then methodical in my case against the religious and political who are working against us. Well, that's the reason why Twistianity is 5 volumes, 3,500 pages. That is why my expose denouncing Allah and Muhammad and Islam, proving that they are frauds in their own words, is 5 volumes and 4,200 pages of evidence and reason. The 3 books I have written to disprove Judaism are thick tomes. I am judicious. I am voluminous. I am methodical when it comes to using evidence and reason to clear the path for you to know God without all of the religious clutter. Now, Dode's opening statement Looks like he's been looking over my shoulder as I survey the hostile posts on X. Boy, am I ever glad that Israelites prefer Facebook 3-1 over X, because Facebook has become exceedingly congenial, a wonderful home to celebrate the covenant with our family and with our God. X, of course, is a veritable cesspool. But since X is the marketplace of news today, both fake and true, um, I need to be in both places. And it is a repository of ignorance and vengeance on X. And yet it is one of the venues that we must use to reach God's people and to defend them against their foes, particularly now with this horrible alliance between progressives and Muslims. This will be our last statement on this program. The quick-tempered and rash individual who was of diminutive stature, Katsir, the easily provoked and weak-minded who is morally and mentally incapacitated, who is readily inflamed and easily angered, who is irritated, displeased, and hostile, engaging in acts, performing and engaging like an idiot, lacking understanding, and who is quarrelsome, is not something that God wants in his company. So the quick-tempered and rash individual who is of diminutive status, who is readily inflamed and angry, is like an idiot, lacking understanding, and is quarrelsome. And so the man of mazima, discretion, by contrast, of conclusions, of deliberations and decisions, mazima, of reasoned judgment and sound considerations and rational counsel, is, of course, going to be loathed and detested, intensely disliked and shunned. Shana, he is abhorred in hostile fashion and abandoned by those who slight him. Boy, is that the world of X. Mishal Word Pictures, 1417. Now, by the way, I'm not trying to completely discourage you from going to X. I need you at X. If you are supportive of Israel, we need you at X. Because we must become a more potent and powerful unified voice against the progressives and Muslims who want to destroy Israel and perpetrate genocide on God's people. So it is important that you're there. And it's important that you know that if you're there, the rash simpletons, the progressives who without hypocrisy and ignorance would have nothing to say, the Muslims without rage and hate would have nothing to offer, that they are going to be exceedingly angry. They're going to do everything they can to thwart you. But let me tell you something, Israel. If you're an Israelite and you're listening to these words and you decide to do what my wife has done, what my good friend Dr. Jeff, who I have known for 20 some odd years now, did. He is Jewish. And when he started to embrace Yahweh's name, the truth about the covenant and the Moed Mikre, truth about the Torah and the prophets, he was attacked by the rabbis. They were vicious towards him because that is a kink in their armor. And they will do everything to make that person's life miserable so that no one else would dare speak against them. It's the same approach that the Roman Catholic Church took to those who challenged their authority. It's ubiquitous amongst the religious. The Christians do it too. And so you need to know that speaking up for God is very unpopular. And that being an idiot today, well, they're a dime a dozen. And the idiots don't like people who speak honestly and who use evidence and reason. So you need to be aware that this is the reaction you're going to get, and you should embrace it. I do. So reasoned conclusions, erudite assessments, are hardly the rage on social media. The algorithms and participants prefer inverting reality and peppering the resulting drivel with F bombs and Nazi references because that is the surest way to tantalize fellow zombies. So I decided to get snarky and I told Xerites, since I haven't lost enough followers today by sharing the truth, I thought it was time to further annoy the religious and political with this post. I do something like that every week, sometimes more often, just because it's really the only way to bear the hideousness of the environment. But again, I know I'm painting it as a nasty picture. And if you're a rational person, you're going to not like it there, but we need you there. We really need you there. We need you to do more than just react with us on YouTube and on Facebook. So, participating in social media for the first time this year was a real awakening for me. You know, I had thought that society had been dumbed down to a deplorable level, but X, well, it serves as proof. There is no longer any shame in being stupid. Retarded is now an accolade amongst the petulant and cantankerous. So, with that, I would like to conclude this episode of Chakmah Choter, our sixth. Look forward to being with you tomorrow. Fortunately, I am now about 150 pages ahead of where we are because the document that I'm sharing from now is written to be part of the fourth volume of the Coming Home series. It is Bashar Herald. The chapter that we're on now is Chakmah Choter. And I have moved in the pursuit of understanding this Chakmah Choter theme, this man from Edom. I've moved now about 150 pages ahead of where we are, so I can be a little more relaxed as I share it with you, knowing that we have lots of material before this particular well runs dry. So thank you for listening. I am the Chakmah Choter, and I appreciate your attention. Good night.